There are rituals people joke about online. Things, urban legends, things meant to scare children at night. But hidden among them are instructions that were never meant to spread. Rituals copied from forgotten books, buried forums, and fragments of ancient belief systems. The kind of knowledge people used to seal away instead of share. Most who claim to try them are lying. The few who actually did stopped talking about it. I didn't believe any of it at first. Curiosity is a dangerous thing, but it's also a powerful one. And the deeper I searched, the stranger the instructions became. Different sources, different cultures, yet all pointing to the same idea. Not spirits, not demons, death itself. Across ancient traditions, from the tomb rituals of ancient Egypt to forbidden underworld practices whispered about in Mesopotamia, there were always warnings about calling what should never be called. Most texts ended the same way. Do not attempt this alone. Naturally, I ignored that warning. I found 3 rituals. 3 different methods people claimed could open a door between the living and whatever waits on the other side. I decided to test them. The first one was strange. The second one nearly killed me. And the third is the reason I'm making this video at all. Because something happened during those nights. Something I can't fully explain. Something that didn't stay where it was supposed to stay. If you're watching this out of curiosity, let me say this now. Some stories are meant to entertain. This isn't one of them. And if you ever come across instructions that look like the ones I found, close the page. Immediately. Curiosity has always been the door that horror walks through. People like to believe they are smarter than the warnings left behind by those who came before them. We read old stories about cursed tombs, forbidden names, rituals scratched into stone, and instead of fear, we feel something else. Interest. Because somewhere in the human mind lives a dangerous question. What if it's real? Across history, people have tried to reach beyond the world of the living. In burial chambers of ancient Egypt, priests wrote spells meant to guide souls through the afterlife. But hidden among them were darker instructions. Warnings about forces that should never be invited into the world of the living. In the ancient cities of Mesopotamia, clay tablets described rituals meant to speak with the dead. But some texts were never translated publicly. Scholars locked them away, claiming certain passages were too disturbing to study further. And it didn't stop in the ancient world. The internet made things worse. Buried in forgotten message boards, abandoned websites, and archived pages that feel like they shouldn't exist anymore, people share rituals. Some are harmless games. Some are obvious fiction. But every now and then, you find instructions that feel different. They are too specific, too detailed, too old. Steps written like they came from something ancient, something passed down carefully. The kind of instructions that assume the reader already understands the risk. Most people close the page. Some people laugh and try it, and a very small number keep digging. I was one of those people. At first it felt like exploring a creepy legend, a story you read late at night just to scare yourself. But the deeper I searched, the stranger the patterns became. Different cultures, different languages, different centuries. Yet the rituals all pointed to the same thing. Not summoning a ghost, not calling a demon, but inviting something that existed long before both. Something patient, something that doesn't chase people, because it knows everyone comes to it eventually. Some rituals claimed you could see it, others said you could speak to it. A few warned you might bring part of it back with you. That should have been enough to stop me. Instead, it convinced me the stories might actually be real. And that was my first mistake. Because once you start reading those instructions, something strange begins to happen. You notice patterns. The same symbols appearing in unrelated places. The same warnings repeated again and again. And the most disturbing part? Many of the people who posted those rituals online disappeared afterward. Accounts abandoned. Threads locked. Users never seen again. At the time, I told myself they probably just lost interest. But I'm not so sure. Because after what happened during the second ritual, I started to understand something terrifying. Those warnings weren't written to scare people. They were written to protect them. The first ritual looked almost harmless. That was the first red flag. Most dangerous things in history don't look dangerous at all. They look simple, almost childish. The instructions for this one were only a few lines long, copied from an old archive buried deep in a forgotten forum thread. At the top of the post was a warning. Do not perform this if you are alone in the house. I was alone. The ritual was called the Mirror of Midnight. According to the instructions, mirrors are not just reflections. In many old traditions, they are doors, thin places where the living world and whatever lies beyond it can briefly touch. Some burial practices in ancient Egypt even covered mirrors after death, fearing something might look back through them. I didn't believe any of that. Not yet. The ritual had to begin at exactly 12:03 a.m. Not midnight, not 12:05, 12:03. No explanation was given. The steps were simple. A dark room, one candle, one mirror, no lights, no noise, no interruptions, and one rule written in capital letters. Do not look away from your reflection. At first, it felt ridiculous. The house was silent, the kind of deep quiet you only notice late at night. I placed the candle in front of the mirror and turned off the lights. The flame flickered softly, casting long shadows behind me. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Just my reflection staring back at me. The instructions said to repeat a phrase under my breath. Over and over. Slowly. Without breaking eye contact. So I did. At first it felt stupid. Then something changed. The room started feeling wrong. Not colder exactly. Just heavier. Like the air had thickened. The candle flames stretched taller for a moment, then shrank again. Shadows along the walls began to move slightly, even though nothing else in the room was moving. I kept staring. My reflection stared back. But after a while, something about it felt off. Subtle. Small things you might miss if you blink. The way my reflection breathed seemed slightly delayed. The tilt of its head looked slower than my own movement. Almost like it was copying me instead of being me. That was when I remembered another warning from the instructions. After a few minutes, your reflection may stop behaving normally. My chest tightened. I told myself it was just my imagination. Staring into a mirror in low light can mess with your brain. There are studies about that. Your mind starts filling in gaps. That explanation worked for about 30 seconds. Then my reflection smiled. I wasn't smiling. I froze. The candle crackled softly behind the glass. The reflection in the mirror was still staring directly into my eyes, but the expression on its face was wrong. Slowly, painfully slowly, the smile faded, and something else replaced it. Fear. Not my fear. It's fear. Like it was looking at something behind me. Every instinct in my body told me to turn around. But the rule came back into my mind immediately. Do not look away from your reflection. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The room felt colder now. The shadows on the walls stretched longer, creeping closer to the mirror. And then the reflection's eyes shifted. Not toward me. Past me. Something was standing behind my chair. Something my reflection could see. Something I couldn't. The worst part wasn't the fear. It was the realization that whatever was behind me had been there long enough for my reflection to notice first. The instructions said if that happened, there was only one safe way to end the ritual. Blow out the candle. Do not turn around. Do not run. Just leave the room. I didn't wait another second. I blew out the candle and walked out as calmly as I could. But right before the room went completely dark, I swear the reflection in the mirror moved. And this time, it wasn't copying me. Night had already swallowed the house. The ritual was over, or at least, that was what Daniel believed. The mirror still stood against the wall, tall and silent, its dark surface reflecting nothing but the faint flame of the candle. The air inside the room felt heavy, thicker than normal air, as if something unseen had begun breathing inside the space with him. Daniel's heart was still racing. At first, nothing happened. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The silence slowly turned into relief. He laughed nervously. See? Nothing, he whispered to himself. But the mirror did not laugh. The candle flickered violently. Not once. Not twice. And again. The temperature dropped so suddenly that Daniel's breath became visible in the darkness. That was when he heard it. A sound. So, barely there. A second breath in the room. Daniel froze. He was alone. At least, he was supposed to be. He slowly turned his head toward the mirror. At first the reflection looked normal. Just the candle. The room. Himself. Then the reflection blinked. Daniel did not blink. But the reflection did. His stomach dropped instantly. A cold wave crawled down his spine. No, oh no, he muttered. He stepped back. The reflection stepped forward. The candle flame suddenly stretched tall like something had inhaled deeply beside it. Then came the whisper, right next to his ear. So close he felt the breath. You opened it. Daniel spun around. Nothing was behind him. But the mirror was no longer reflecting the room. It was darker now. Too dark. As if the glass had become a hole. A doorway. Something inside it moved. Slowly, a shape began forming behind his reflection. Tall, thin, wrong. Its limbs bent at angles that human bones should never bend. Daniel couldn't breathe. His legs refused to move. The figure in the mirror leaned forward. Closer, closer, until its face pressed against the inside of the glass. But it had no eyes. Only a wide crack where a mouth should be. The candle suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Daniel screamed. But the scream stopped halfway. Because the whisper came again. This time from inside his head. You invited me. The mirror cracked. One thin line at first. Then another. Then dozens. Each crack spreading like veins across the surface. Something inside was pushing. The glass bulged outward. Daniel tried to run. His body still wouldn't obey. A long black hand pushed through the mirror. The fingers were too long. Too many joints. They dragged slowly across the floor like a spider testing the world for the first time. Daniel finally stumbled backward. But the thing kept coming. One arm. Then another. Then its head. Its mouth opened wider and wider until it split the shape of its face. And from that endless mouth came the voice. Not loud. Not fast. Just certain. You looked at me. The room filled with a smell like wet earth and something rotting underneath. Daniel collapsed against the wall. His eyes locked with the creature's empty face. And that was when he realized something even worse. The creature was not entering the room. The room was being pulled into the mirror. The walls stretched. The floor twisted. The darkness inside the glass was swallowing everything. Daniel screamed again. But no one heard him. The mirror slowly became calm again. The candle relit itself. The room returned to silence. Empty. Except for the mirror. And if someone looked closely, they would see Daniel, trapped inside the reflection, screaming without sound. And behind him, the presence smiling. The first ritual should have been a warning. It should have been enough to make me stop. It wasn't. I found the second ritual tucked into an old, dusty manuscript that smelled of mildew and ash. The page was brittle, edges frayed, written in a language I didn't understand fully, but the instructions had been translated by someone long gone. There was a warning written in bold, jagged letters. Most who attempt this do not survive. Those who do, rarely remain the same. Of course, I ignored it. This ritual required more than a mirror, more than a candle. This one demanded a place abandoned, untouched by human life. An empty house, a ruined chapel, or a field where the grass hadn't been stepped on for decades. I chose an old chapel on the outskirts of town. Its doors hung crooked on their hinges. Stained glass windows were shattered, sunlight never fully reaching the floor. The smell of decay and rot hit me the moment I stepped inside. The ritual began with a circle. A perfect, impossibly precise circle, drawn with salt and ash. Black candles were placed at its 4 points, each flame winking as if alive. In the center, I knelt, reading the words aloud exactly as they were written. At first, nothing happened. Then the temperature dropped so fast my breath froze in front of me. The air grew thick and heavy, pressing down on my chest. My vision blurred at the edges, and shadows along the walls began to shift, writhing like they had a life of their own. Then I heard it, a whisper. Not a single voice, but many voices layered together. Voices of people I didn't know. Voices of people who were dead. Voices of something that had never been alive. It called my name. The words slithered into my mind, curling around thoughts, dragging them into darkness. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. And then I saw it. A figure standing in the corner of the chapel. It wasn't human. Its limbs were too long, too thin. Its head tilted at an impossible angle, eyes glowing faintly red. It had no mouth. Yet I could hear its breathing in my skull. The instructions said to remain calm, to continue the chant. I tried. My lips moved, but the voice that came out was not mine. It was hollow, deep, like it carried the weight of centuries of hunger. The figure stepped forward. Every step made the floor groan, though nothing touched it. The shadows followed it, stretching toward me like black water. My mind screamed to stop, to run, to anything. But the ritual had rules. Breaking them meant inviting the presence closer. Closer, closer. It reached the circle. I could feel it now, not just in the room, but inside me. My heartbeat slowed, my limbs froze. I could feel my soul being pulled, stretched, like something invisible was trying to drag me into the darkness. Panic clawed at me, but instinct fought through the ritual's pull. I remembered the final step. The one tiny detail that could save me. Blow out the candles. With every ounce of strength left in my frozen body, I snatched the nearest candle and blew. The flames went out all at once, plunging the room into darkness so complete it felt alive. Silence. Then the whispering stopped. The shadow froze. And then, it was gone. I stumbled out of the chapel into the pale morning light, gasping for air. My hands shook. My legs barely held me. I looked back at the ruined building, expecting to see something, anything, but there was nothing. Or so I thought. That night back in my apartment I saw it. A figure at the corner of my room. Silent. Motionless. Watching. It didn't need to enter my home. The ritual had marked me. The presence had found a way. And I realized, with a cold, sinking certainty, the second ritual hadn't just nearly killed me. It had followed me. It was patient. It was waiting. And it would not stop. The second ritual should have been over. It wasn't. Not really. Not for me. The moment I left that chapel, something changed. The air I breathed felt heavier. Shadows no longer obeyed the light. They lingered, stretched, moved just out of the corner of my eyes. My apartment, once safe, became a cage. It started small. At first, I thought it was imagination. A flicker in the corner of the room. A shadow where none should be. Footsteps that didn't match mine. But these were subtle things, little hints that something was there. Then the dreams began. At first, ordinary nightmares. The kind that make you wake drenched in sweat. But soon, the nightmares became personal. They didn't just scare me, they studied me, whispering my secrets, my sins, my regrets back to me. Names of people I'd never told anyone, events I thought were long buried, mistakes I had buried deep. They surfaced in whispers so clear I could feel them against my skin. And I was never alone. I would wake at exactly 3:03 a.m. Boys. The clock would flicker. The shadows in the corners of my room would twitch. And in the mirror, sometimes, I would see movement that shouldn't be there. A figure standing just behind me. When I turned, nothing. But the reflection always stayed. I tried to rationalize it. Lack of sleep, stress, too much obsession with the rituals. But reality started to fracture. Doors I knew were locked would be open. Objects moved when I wasn't looking. My phone rang at impossible hours, silent calls, displaying nothing but static, and when I answered, I heard breathing. Not human breathing. Not mine. Something else. Something patient. I began to notice patterns in everyday life. Shadows that moved faster than any human could. Animals avoided me. My cat hissed at empty corners, refusing to step into the room. My dog refused to sleep in the same house. Even the streetlights outside flickered differently around my apartment, like they were afraid. Sometimes, I could feel it. A weight in the room. A presence behind me when I was alone. Heavy. Watching. Waiting. Patient. I tried to explain it to friends. "You're imagining things," they said. "You need to sleep," they said. But they didn't see what I saw. They didn't feel the air tighten around them as I did. They didn't hear the whispering grow louder when I was alone. And I couldn't sleep. Every night I felt it closer. Shadows stretched into my bed, coldness crawling over my skin. My dreams became impossible. Not dreams, but memories that weren't mine. Visions of rituals I had never performed, of figures that moved in impossible ways, faces that whispered and then dissolved into black mist. I tried to leave town, tried to change my life, tried to escape. It didn't matter. The aftereffects weren't temporary. The ritual marked me, and something had followed me home. Something patient, something that didn't care if I ran, something that was already inside me, watching, waiting. And sometimes, late at night, I can still hear it whispering, "You invited me, now I will stay." By the time I found the third ritual, I already knew enough to stop. I shouldn't have opened that page. I shouldn't have read it. But curiosity, that dangerous, insistent curiosity, it wouldn't let me turn away. The third ritual was nothing like the first two. It wasn't a mirror. It wasn't a chapel. It wasn't a place at all. It was a set of instructions meant to be performed alone, in total darkness, without protection, without hesitation. The warning at the top was so severe, it nearly burned my eyes when I read it. Most who attempt this are never seen again. Those who survive are no longer human. Do not attempt under any circumstances. Do not even think the words aloud. It required no props, no salt, no circle, no candle. Only your voice, your breath, and a single name. One name I would never speak. The ritual said, "Call the name once. Listen. Do not repeat. Do not resist. It will come for you whether you are ready or not." I didn't attempt it. I couldn't. Even reading the instructions made my skin crawl. I could feel something stirring in the edges of my vision, something that had been following me since the second ritual. Something patient, waiting for me to break the rules, waiting for me to make a mistake. I slept with the lights on that night. All of them. But sleep didn't bring rest. Shadows moved differently now. Not along walls, but across rooms, creeping through furniture, bending light and shape in ways that made no sense. Sometimes I would catch it in reflections. Not a shadow, but a figure behind the reflection. Watching, waiting, smiling. I tried to destroy the manuscript. Burn it. Flush it. But it always returned. Somewhere in my apartment, it would appear again. Pages slightly charred but readable. Ink dark and glistening as if alive. I began to notice the symptoms others had warned about in the manuscript. A cold weight on my chest when I sat still. Dreams that weren't dreams. Memories of the dead, rituals I never performed, mouths opening in darkness where there was nothing. Whispers that followed me into the waking world, repeating phrases I had never heard before, names I could never remember. The feeling of eyes inside my head, watching from behind my own thoughts. I realized the third ritual didn't need to be attempted to curse me. Simply knowing it existed was enough. Simply reading its instructions was enough. Because some forces don't wait to be invited. Some forces only need acknowledgement. Sometimes, you never get a choice. The third ritual remains untouched, unperformed, sealed in pages I cannot destroy. But at night, I can hear the faintest whisper, like a breath across my ear. You will try. Eventually, you will call my name. And in the darkness of my apartment, I know it isn't a threat. It's a promise. A promise that one day, I may no longer resist. And when that day comes, there will be no turning back. By now, I understood that the rituals were not games. They were not stories. They were warnings. But warnings are useless once something has found you. The presence that followed me after the second ritual, the knowledge of the third, it was no longer invisible. It was watching, probing, and marking me. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, it began leaving signs. The first signs were subtle. A shadow stretching too long in the corner of my vision. A door that I swore I had locked, now slightly ajar. A floorboard creaking in an empty hallway. I dismissed them at first. Logic tried to cling to me. But fear has a way of sharpening the senses. Then the whispers began. So, almost comforting at first. Faint voices repeating my name, low murmurs through the walls. But soon they changed. Sharp, urgent, insistent. My name was no longer called, it was demanded. I began noticing patterns everywhere. Clocks stopped at the same time every night, 3:03 a.m., a number that now haunted me. Animals refused to enter rooms I occupied. By the time I reached the 9th day after discovering the 3rd ritual, I had stopped counting hours. Time no longer belonged to me. It belonged to the presence. Every shadow in my apartment stretched longer. Every reflection seemed alive. Every whispered name carried weight. I tried to warn myself, tried to rationalize it. Sleep, light, noise, nothing worked. The signs were everywhere. And then came the message. It wasn't written on paper. It wasn't whispered through speakers. It wasn't carved in stone. It was inside my mind. At first, subtle. A thought that wasn't mine. A phrase forming just as I tried to concentrate. Then louder. Words forming sentences I could not ignore. You cannot escape. You invited me. You read the words. You opened the door. Panic clawed at me, but I couldn't move. My body refused. The presence had me exactly where it wanted. And then the final words appeared, clear, undeniable, impossible to ignore. The 3rd ritual awaits. One day, you will call my name. I tried to fight it, tried to scream, but the air itself seemed to resist me. My breath stuck in my chest. My vision swam with shadows. I felt cold seep into my bones, and then a weight pressed against my skull, as if the presence itself had crouched behind my head. And then, silence. A silence so absolute that it was louder than any scream. I survived. Somehow. I'm still here. But nothing is the same. The mirror is no longer just a reflection. The shadows are no longer just absence. The whispers will never stop. The rituals are not stories. They are instructions, warnings, and consequences. I leave this message for anyone watching. Anyone curious enough to seek forbidden knowledge. Do not summon what should not be called. Do not read what should not be read. Do not look where you are told not to look. Because some things wait for you. And when they arrive, it is too late to survive.